Hey, this is Julian McClurkin, your chief storyteller with Tribevest. But today, we're not talking stories, we're learning lessons. This is a masterclass on how to build wealth. Today, I sit down with Jim Pfeiffer, the founder of Left Field Investing, to learn about passive investing through real estate. Next up, Chapter 5, how to pick an asset class.
Welcome back to the Masterclass. This is now Chapter 5, and we're going to focus on how to pick an asset class. Jim, how do you decide what asset class to invest in?
Well, you got to start first by knowing what are the options, right? And there are a lot of options. So you have the first, the most popular, multifamily, self-storage, mobile home parks. That's what everyone's after these days. You also have triple net leases, either industrial or commercial. Now, triple net means the tenant pays real estate, taxes, maintenance, and repairs, and the insurance.
Ooh, I like that.
Exactly.
It's like a triple double.
Yeah, triple nets are great. I love those too. And then office and retail are pretty common also, but they are not as popular now given the pandemic and what that's done to those industries.
What are some other classes?
So some of the lesser known classes would be ATM machines, private notes, so mortgage notes, private lending, assisted living facilities, resort properties, agriculture, student housing, oil and gas, and then development.
That's a pretty long list. I wouldn't even know where to start.
You start with what you know, right? So you probably have lived in an apartment at some point. You might have used a self-storage unit at some time. You've probably used an ATM before, right? So start with the things that you know and understand, and then branch out from there and figure out, is there something else I could do? A lot of people, I talked about this, a lot of people get started flipping single-family homes. And then they move on to maybe buy and hold, and then they move on to maybe buying small commercial multifamily properties. And so if you do that, you'll get a sense of, okay, now I'm going to get into this syndication thing and do it passively. And so then maybe you go into an apartment building, and then you learn about apartment buildings, and you learn how great those are, and then you think, everyone's talking about mobile home parks. Well, now you have some experience with investing in places where people live. Now you say, okay, how do I transfer that to a mobile home park? So you just kind of keep going, use your community. Mm-hmm. That's where I keep saying it, Left Field Investors and Tribevest, they help you learn more stuff, right? So you could talk to other people that are investing in these other assets and find out what works best for you. Because there's some people that specialize in one or the other, and there's syndicators. Usually the syndicators only do one thing, but they're branching out also. So you got to make sure that they, for example, one of the syndicators I really like, they're multifamily properties, that's all they ever did. They started into self-storage. Mm-hmm. Now, if they try to do that themselves, there's no chance I would invest with them. Yeah. But what they did is they hired a self-storage expert as a full-time employee who's done it for 30 years. And so, okay, now I can go and evaluate their deals. If that makes sense. Mm-hmm.
Because now they're bringing expertise into the deal with them.
Right.
With all of these different asset classes, is there one that's like more safe than the other? I know as I'm looking at this list, the first one that I actually got involved in was probably mobile home parks. I purchased my first piece of real estate, it's not even real estate, was a mobile home. And I bought it for like $1,000, fixed it up, and resold it for like $7,000.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to know what is the safest. One thing that people say a lot is you always need a place to live, right? So if you're investing in multifamily apartments, or you're investing in mobile homes, people are always going to need those. So that might be the safest, but really all of these are an asset, right? It's a real asset. It's not a piece of paper. You're investing in an asset. So it's very rare that any of these go to zero. Is there risk? Yes. I think the risk is a lot less in real estate and most of these assets than other things that you're in. But then if you're going to do resort investing, or you're going to do retail or office right now, right after a pandemic, those might have a little bit more risk. Or assisted living facilities, right? You're waiting for demographics to make those a great investment, but they probably will be. So you just have to do your research and understand, where you're comfortable. Start there, and then you'll start branching out. And one of the things that everyone talks about in our group is the shiny object syndrome.
Oh yeah.
So shiny object syndrome, I think of it as the movie from Up, Squirrel, where the dog goes squirrel running around. And I had that, right? When I first started in passive investing, I had an old 401k, right, that I rolled over. And I turned it into a something I could invest out of. That's a whole different story. But I was investing in all kinds of different stuff that I didn't vet properly because I didn't know what I was doing yet, because I had that shiny object syndrome. Someone would be talking to you and someone would say squirrel, and I'd run over there and go invest in whatever they told me to invest in.
Yeah.
And so that's part of why we started Left Field Investors, was to give people, okay, you can still do the shiny object and run around, but maybe just invest in things that you know and understand.
Is there a strategy involved when it comes to selecting your asset class you want to invest in?
Yeah, I think after you've kind of gotten through the beginning stage where you're only investing in a couple things, and most people probably start with multifamily homes and multifamily apartment buildings, and that's probably a smart way to start. Then you need to start thinking, where do things fit in your investment portfolio? Are you investing for cash flow? Are you investing for appreciation? Are you investing for both? So an example would be, if you're investing, if you're doing private lending, right, you're not going to get any appreciation there. So if you're trying to grow your wealth, private lending probably isn't the best place to do that. If you're investing for cash flow, you might want to invest in ATMs, and there's no appreciation there. You just get cash every month, and then at the end, you've been paid back plus some, but there's no asset left.
It's literally cash flow.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So you have to match what you're doing with everything else. And also, if you want major tax write-offs, again, ATMs is a good investment, and others aren't as good. So you need to try to match your strategy to the asset class. And as you grow and learn and get into the syndication space, you will find all these different asset classes that you didn't know of, and then you can start picking the right one for the strategy at the time. So when I first started, I had sold all of my multifamily properties. So I had a big tax liability. My accountant said, you need to do a lazy 1031, right? So what I did was I found a syndicator who did a great job of doing that bonus depreciation that we talked about, that gave me these big losses that I could use to offset my gains. So that's why I picked that strategy. But then I kept investing with that operator because I liked them, but I had switched, and now I needed cash flow, right? Because I wasn't working my W-2 job anymore. So now I was investing in these deals that didn't have a lot of cash flow, but that's what I needed. And so then I realized, okay, I need to change my strategy because I've written off all this tax liability I can. Now I need to go start investing for cash flow. And so that's kind of how you do it. You have to figure out what you're looking for. You want to diversify, but you don't want to diversify just for the sake of diversifying. You need to make sure that you have a good strategy for how you're accumulating your assets and how they all work together.
When you say you were able to record major losses when you went with that syndicator, it was as a result of you investing in that syndication. That reflects a loss on your taxes?
Yeah, so it's the bonus depreciation, the cost segregation that we talked about earlier. So that's the one where I invested $50,000, and on my K1 they sent me back a $55,000 loss.
Yeah.
Which was great because it's a paper loss, and what that does is I can offset that $55,000 can offset the gain I had from selling another property. So if I had a capital gain of $60,000, now I only have a $5,000 gain, and so instead of paying taxes on $60,000 or whatever the numbers were, I'm only paying it on $5,000.
Okay.
And that's where you make your money, right? Because now you're not paying tax.
So that concludes chapter 5. On to the next chapter.